Thank you, Eric. How are the members of the public doing out there? Thank you for social distancing. Thank you for coming tonight. We're about to start our meeting. It's only 5:29. I'll make it. I'm so loud. Ooh. Yes. Where, does it say Wolf? Yeah. Thank you for catching that. That's incorrect. They didn't update it yet. It's something I don't have access to. I'll have IT fix that. I really appreciate you noticing that. I'm going to make a note.
She was on the UFAC committee too.
Yes, she was also on the Environmental Commission.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to make a note of that right now. Okay, it is now 5:31. Today is October 14th, 2021. And this is the regularly scheduled Environmental Commission meeting. Chair, would you like to begin the meeting?
Absolutely, thank you. I guess I can actually do a roll call. I guess we can do it the way we used to do it. I'm sorry, I have to remember how we do things in person. Welcome, everybody. It's been a long time. When was the last time we were in person, Chamomile?
March 13th, 2020.
Wow, long time ago. Well, it's wonderful to see everybody in person. Thank you to the public who has come to participate. I'll speak for myself, but I think we've all missed having more direct communication with the public. It's so important to have public process. I want to really commend the city and all the IT folks on making these meetings happen. Even while we were not allowed to be here, I think they were still very productive, and we were able to have public comment in many, many different formats, and it did preserve the process. But it's good to be back here in person. So let's see. We used to do this. That roll call was we would just go down the line, and each person would say who's here. So I'm Chair Novi, and I'm here.
Figure out this new stuff. Vice Chair, Commissioner Adams.
Carol Parker. Katie Kramer, here.
William Morrison, present.
And let the record show we have all 5 members of the Environmental Commission here tonight with 2 vacancies. Thank you.
And I think the city is still taking applications for those vacancies. Is that correct?
Correct.
So anybody out there who wants to be environmental commissioner, it's all glory. It's all glory. We're looking for great people. That's now we can do a pledge of allegiance. Please rise if you want to. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Do we have any oral communications?
We do not have any oral communications.
We have some that are item specific later?
Correct.
Okay. We will entertain any motions to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I initiate a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I see we have no informational items, so we can move right on to action items. And I think we have Ashley today on Ordinance 2021-15.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ashley Stratakis. I'm a management analyst for the Public Works Department, and I oversee the city's solid waste programs. And I'm here tonight to review a draft ordinance, 2021-15, mandatory organics recycling and edible food recovery. So a little bit of background. Staff has been to the Environmental Commission before, presented on SB 1383 requirements, but as a reminder, it's requiring everyone to reduce organic waste disposal by 50% by 2020 and then 75% by 2025. And so here are some of the specific requirements that the regulations define, which include collection and processing. And you see we have that green leaf because we are in compliance. Very exciting. We started collecting food waste with our yard waste June 1st for residents, and Edco, our waste haulers, in the process of enrolling commercial customers. And then we also have monitoring, reporting, and enforcement requirements to meet, product procurement, ordinances and policies, edible food recovery, and education and outreach. And so tonight the focus is on ordinances and policies. So to comply with 1383, we will be updating our municipal code. So first we have, again, our ordinance 2021-15. It's introducing the new chapter to the city's code for mandatory organics recycling. And then we also will be amending our solid waste management code and construction and demolition debris recycling. So just a quick overview of the highlights of each update, or in this case, a new chapter. This chapter will require everyone, residential and commercial customers, to enroll in the city's 3 container collection program. So that's trash, blue container recycling, and then organic waste recycling. And then for certain food generators, they will be required to recover edible food. And then within the ordinance, there's also requirements for monitoring and inspection and enforcement. And then for the amendments to the solid waste management chapter, it's mostly just housekeeping. We have some updates to the defined terms and then some other updates to make sure that we're in compliance with SB 1383 requirements. And then we'll also be allowing for shared collection services in special circumstances. And then really quick for CMD debris recycling, it's just bringing us up to date with Cal Green standards, and it includes 65% diversion rate for new construction and related activities. And so we're currently, this city is seeking public input through October 22nd, so next Friday. So we have a website up where people can review the draft ordinance as well as the amendments to the other ordinances and provide input. And there's also a workshop for businesses next week on the 20th to really go through what will be required for them. And then finally, on November 17th is currently when we're planning to bring this, the introduction of this ordinance to council. And that's all I have for you. There's a website where you can see the ordinances and then the email to provide any input or feedback. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Anybody have any questions? Or actually, maybe, do we have any public comment on this? None. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I have a question on one of the provisions, just a point of clarification. Thank you so much, Ashley. That was a great presentation. And I was just looking through the draft ordinance. There was a provision, 11-20-030 is award of franchise. And there's a section E that says it's unlawful to store or accumulate any solid waste for a period of time in excess of 1 week. And I was wondering if that included organic waste. So like, would that prohibit residential composting, or was I misreading that provision?
No, it doesn't include residential composting. I'd have to look at the language more carefully, but there are other sections that kind of explain, what's permitted, and so that wouldn't be included.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there. I did too much of a deep dive into something that impacts my what I do for a living, so I went into the construction debris a little too far, and I was just wondering, I've filled out those forms before in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just wondering what would be considered an exemption from construction debris. It was listed in there as as possible exemptions, but didn't give an example per se.
So from having to meet the 65% recycling requirement,
Yes.
I think one exemption I can think of is an emergency. So if there's, or maybe if there's like a fire and so everything is like burned, then we wouldn't want that in the recycling. It'd be kind of contamination. Yeah.
Any other questions? So Ashley, you're looking for us for input, if we have any, which you've heard a couple of questions. And then you need an approval to recommend this to go to the city council.
Yes, correct.
So maybe just before we entertain that, I'm just ask a very general question. What's the additional length of Edco's contract, and how much input have they had in this update?
So they're aware of the updates, and as far as creating, so we use the state model. So CalRecycle, the state agency, they provided a model ordinance that they recommend we use. So we based it off of that, and then we looked at other cities and to see what they had included in their ordinance if they had passed it. And so that's what we referenced. And then I believe you had another question that I didn't answer. What was?
How long is remaining on Edco's contract?
I believe it's automatic renewal every year, and I think we have 5 years. So if we decide we want to go with someone else, we still are locked in with them for 5 more years.
5 more years.
Mhm.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'm happy to make a motion to recommend this to the city council to introduce and adopt ordinance 2021-15, 2021-16, and 2021-17 to the city council.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, that passes unanimously. Ashley, thank you for that. I know this is a lot of hard work.
Thank you.
And the fact that there's not a lot of questions means you're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, now we're moving on to action item B, draft ordinance 2021-19, a balloon ordinance, and Eric is going to lead us on this one.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to go real quickly through this. The good thing about the actual ordinance language that's under consideration tonight under draft ordinance 2021-19 is pretty straightforward. It's not 25 pages of ordinance language and provisions, so it runs pretty quickly. Just as quick background to reorient the commission, it was on May 13th that this commission passed a recommendation to the city council to adopt a resolution an ordinance to prohibit the sale, use, distribution, and release of lighter than air-filled balloons here in Encinitas. So with that, staff went to the drawing board on ordinance language. We looked at ordinances around the state that are related to that, to the regulation of balloons. The premise to a lot of those ordinances varies across the state. A lot of it is related to the release of balloons and the concern over fires and the Mylar balloons in the power lines. And really, I know that from the recommendation from this commission that when it comes to Encinitas, we're really looking at it from a marine debris issue as a primary goal, as a primary driver. So that was the approach to the draft ordinance language, which I'll walk through for you here. So draft ordinance language, so really what it starts with is some key definitions. So obviously, and why these are important in this context is that the definition of balloon is broad here. It's not just Mylar, it's not just latex, it's across the board. It covers the gamut of balloon types. So the regulatory language is approaching a more broad spectrum. And then we define gas lighter than air. So it's not just helium, hydrogen, methane, oxygen, nitrogen. So there's a lot of opportunity to regulate there. And then you really just get into the provisions, the regulatory language. Again, some of the key elements in this, I'm not going to read this language out loud because you've all seen it, but some of the important elements of this is that it's across the board. It covers all the pieces of the recommendation that were included. So the use, the sale, the distribution, and the release. So that's what this ordinance language covers. It also includes, so the second provision is the release provision that you see there. And then we also included the provision to exclude the governmental and scientific research. Again, all of this consistent with the recommendation from the commission. So with that, the recommended action is to consider and provide input. So real similar to what we did on the last item, any input that you may have, and then approving a recommendation to go to City Council to introduce and ultimately adopt Ordinance 2021-19. Any questions?
Do we have public comment on this?
Yes, we do.
If it's okay with the rest of the commission, I think we can go right to public comment first.
Okay, we had numerous written public comments, and we currently have 4 public speakers for item 7B. Our first speaker is Tina Overland. If Tina Overland would like to come up to the microphone, or if she would just like to say she's in support or opposition, you're welcome to address the council for 3 minutes if you would like. Hence the speaker slip.
Yes, I understand. I just hoping to maybe speak later rather than first.
Sure, I'll put you towards the end, no problem. Our first speaker rather, now is Mr. Treb Henning.
I'd like to speak after she speaks. Commission, thank you very much for giving me the time to talk. My name is Treb Heining. I started my career with balloons in 1969. I'm sure you all remember that year. So I've been in the balloon business for more than 50 years. And during that time, I have personally witnessed and experienced the joy and happiness that balloons bring to people throughout the world. In your ordinance here, we have no problem with releases. Balloon releases have stopped for, I think, more than 20 years, and we support that as a balloon industry, no releasing of balloons. I'm hoping you'll listen to what I have to say, though, as this balloon ban ordinance, I believe, is overreaching and in some ways misguided, and it hurts the constituents that run businesses and everything in your community. We live in a world today where people, institutions, and items can be canceled and slandered through spreading of false information on the internet that people take as fact. Nothing is more true than what is happening with the balloon industry. Placing a ban on them is not the answer and will not accomplish what you and I both want. I will share some ideas on that at the end of my talk. Education and awareness, I think, is the key. This should be especially true when it comes to something that brings as much joy and happiness as a balloon. Misinformation about balloons and helium is all over the websites that anyone can start and then continue to spread. And who really has time to study what is being said? Very few, okay? Let me give you some examples. Loggerhead turtles, the gentle giants of the ocean, an endangered species. Widely reported that these gentle giants will ingest a latex balloon, will cause its death, although some 30 years after this became a rallying cry, there is yet to be one case of this actually happening. The esteemed Professor Peter Lutz from the University of Miami actually did a study back in the late 80s of these turtles in captivity and found that while some of them would eat latex balloons, none of them died from doing so. 10,000 loggerhead turtles are killed by the fishing industry every year. Makes me doubt that balloon debris is the second largest problem in our oceans today, another fact that is quoted extensively on these propaganda websites. The world is running out of helium. We've all read the reports, correct? Nothing could be further from the truth. Many years ago, the U.S. stockpiles of helium in Amarillo, Texas, were starting to be depleted due to the increased usage with MRIs, flat screen TVs, and devices like that. Up to that point, the U.S. was a supplier of helium to the whole world. We never had to look for it. It was just a byproduct of oil drilling. With the dwindling supplies in the U.S., companies all over the world began to look for and produce helium, and in the last 10 years, more helium has been discovered than the previous 50. In fact, there will be a glut of helium on the market in the next few years, causing prices to go down. We're not running out of helium, never will. Should also mention that balloon usage doesn't even register on any graph when it comes to helium usage. It is too small. Finally, as promised, here are some solutions. There is not a balloon professional on the planet that does not want the same thing everyone in this room wants, cleaner oceans and a planet, and yet you are ready to put them out of business. Placing a ban on balloons at parties and events, actually on the beaches, is something that I would support, on the beaches themselves, and I believe others in the industry would too. One of the biggest problems, though, is putting helium in the hands of the public, who do not practice the balloon practices that the balloon professionals do, weighting every balloon and disposing of them properly. I would propose that there would be a nationwide ban on the sale of these portable helium tanks at the party stores. This is where the issue of balloons being released into the environment is the biggest problem. People take these down to the beaches, fill balloons up, and they don't care. Okay? These are just a couple of ideas, but of course I'm sure there are many more, and that would be great. That would be great and would not wipe out the joy and happiness that balloons bring. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Heining.
It's very hard to talk with these masks on.
Our next speaker, June Hansberger.
I have some slides. Do you have those? Did you get my slides or no? I put in a ticket. Is there not a, sorry, I should have actually checked with you, Chamomile. I can go now. I apologize. I did put in I sent a PowerPoint I put in a help desk order. Is there anybody here that will deal with that or no?
Excuse me, that went to our IT department. I could find out if they could produce those and you could speak later.
Yeah, I'm sure those two could go. I'm sorry. We're
No
doing
problem.
a dance. I should have double checked with you. I totally apologize.
That's okay, thank you.
Usually, I think Dave is usually sitting over there.
Yes, Dave is on our IT staff. We'll see if he can help us with that. Thank
If
you.
not, I'll wing it, but thank you. I just realized Dave wasn't there.
Tina Overland. Tina, if you could come to the podium, you have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Hi. So I am in support of this balloon ordinance, and I just want to say I really don't see how education can work to help with this problem that we have with all the balloons in the ocean and affecting the ecosystem, also in the desert and whatnot. I think that people already know they're not supposed to let the balloons go. I mean, most people do, but a lot of times it's an accident. They just accidentally, little kids have the balloons that they're feeling joyful and happy, and they accidentally let go of the balloon, and then it's gone, and this becomes this problem that we have. And that's my big concern. I don't think that education is working, and I haven't seen anywhere about helium being a renewable, or we have enough of it, or that the other gentleman was saying. So I don't know what to say about that, but I think that from what I understand, that is a big problem with helium. And it just doesn't, I think there are alternatives such as, putting a balloon on a stick, and it could be a big stick or a short stick, and you can have balloons everywhere. I mean, I personally, don't like plastic, but if that's a way to bring joy and happiness to kids, and it's an alternative rather than having, the helium in the balloons and the mistake of them being released, that just seems to make much more sense to me. And so, yes, that's why I'm fully in support of this ordinance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I think Chamomile's on the phone with IT. So now might be a good moment to, if anyone on the commission has any questions or comments.
This is Commissioner Kramer. I just have a comment just to remind, us on the commission and the audience that this is not a ban on all balloons. This is just a ban on helium-filled balloons. So just to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Chamomile, did we get an IT answer?
I apologize, we aren't able to provide those, but we'll have to invite June Hansberger back to another meeting with those slides. We apologize.
If I forward it to Eric, can you pull them up, or would that work, or no? Or should I just wing it? I'm happy to wing it. I use my school teacher skills.
I can try. But why don't you come on up, and if you want to just email them to me, and if I can pull some IT magic, I will do my best.
Thank you, Eric.
So while you're working on that, Chamomile, is there a way for you to summarize for us the email where the yeas, the sort of for and against in other from the public comments in emails? I know there were a few.
I think that would better be inferred by your reading of the agenda report. So we don't want to make any
That's fine.
assessments based on the comments. There will be, just, this is also for the benefit of the public as well, so this is a stop along the way. There is going to continue to be opportunity to provide public comment and input on this ordinance outside of this meeting as well.
I emailed it to you. I sent the email. I don't know if that's.
We have a speaker that can go next, and then we'll have June Hansberger go last. Is that okay, Mrs. Hansberger? Okay.
I apologize. I did fill out the help desk.
No problem. No problem. We now have Mark O'Connor at the podium representing Surfrider Foundation, and he would like to speak to the commission.
Hello, Commissioners. Yeah, I'm Mark O'Connor. I'm an Encinitas resident and Surfrider volunteer. Tina is with us tonight, and we Zoomed with you back in May when you asked staff to create this draft balloon ordinance. The documents that you created, the PowerPoint that you created, all came from reliable sources that show what dangers balloons can cause in the ocean. Today, you review the draft to ensure it meets your intent. We believe your intent was to end all balloon pollution, lighter than air balloons. We thank staff for creating a comprehensive ordinance. Balloon pollution is a zero-waste nightmare. This draft corrects that locally. The draft covers balloons of all materials, mylar and latex. It covers balloon kits, canister of helium, and balloons you fill yourself. It covers the release of balloons of any material, mylar and latex, recognizing the environmental dangers and pollution caused by both. Back in May, we provided data for 2019, pre-pandemic, 3,173 balloons recovered in countywide beach cleanups. Just recently, the best data I could get was from Coastal Cleanup Day, run by I Love a Clean San Diego. During that recent event, they recovered 239 balloons during the event, which I thought was staggering. In my jar, and I've brought this before, is over 160 balloons I personally have picked up between Swami's and Beacons Beach. I think back in May it was about 120. I haven't been able to get down as often, but in the last week, I've gone 5 days and I've recovered 8 more balloons of either latex or mylar. So these typically aren't recorded. For some reason, I don't record them down to Surfrider headquarters. And I know there's lots of people out there I see picking them up, so the numbers are much higher than what we have as data to share with you. Balloons travel east and west. Balloons are in the ocean, mountains, and deserts. We've actually united with a UCI research assistant in Borrego Springs, and he's reporting balloons in the mountains and deserts, collecting them when he can, when he's out on his job sites. So what we ask is that you protect all wildlife, from sea turtles to desert tortoises, from balloons. I hope this draft matches your intent on marine debris, and I please ask you to vote yes to move this draft forward to council for review and an eventual vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark O'Connor. And our next speaker, our last speaker for this item, is June Hansberger.
I have very little faith happening over here, so sorry. I hate to be the. Mark, you want to keep talking? Are you good? Yeah, that's good.
I had another 45 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't,
fine.
because it's not, it doesn't, my email's not connected on this computer, and it's going through this crazy
It's fine.
process that's making me uncomfortable.
Thank
so.
you very much. for
You're
your
welcome.
time.
I
really
apologize.
appreciate it. I'm sorry to prolong that. I'm June Hansberger. I am a former commissioner. It's great to see all of you tonight. And I, along with Katie Kramer, Commissioner Kramer, and Ingi Bisconnor, worked on this about 6 months ago, and along with Surfrider Foundation. I appreciated all of your support the first time we brought it to the commission, and I am hoping that we also have your support again. There were 5 main things we talked about. Balloons, actually, when they are released, they go up, but they come down, they end up in the oceans, they break into microplastics. That ends up in our water, in our food, in animals. So not only just big, but little pieces have a huge impact. The strings and the balloons themselves get ingested and entangled. We saw many, I had many photos that I was going to show tonight, but sorry, they were in the last presentation, that showed the balloons entangling animals and also animals ingesting them. Once they are ingested, they block their intestines and they can no longer eat. Additionally, mylar balloons and other balloons get up into the wires and they short out power and cause fires. I think the data we had was something like 500 fires or electricity outages were attributed to mylar balloons in a number of years. I apologize, I don't have the data on the top of my head. But it was a significant number of fire and power outages attributed to balloons and the wires. I, much like Mark, have lived in this community for 30 years, and every single time I am out on the beach, I find a balloon or a piece of a balloon, and I just feel that this is one small step that we can take. As Commissioner Kramer stated, this is not banning all balloons. This is just banning lighter than air-filled balloons. And I was actually just driving up Encinitas Boulevard the other day, and I saw a great alternative to a helium-filled balloon. It was just a balloon on a stick, and it was for an apartment building. And actually, I think they had the hard plastic ones, which were, it gives you the same joy, I guess you will say, as a balloon. That they don't bring me any joy, but I'm sure they do some people. So it gives you the same feeling. And then additionally, in our presentation, which anybody can look up, it is a part of this attachment, and it's part of the public record, showed that all of the different things you can do with helium can be done with just air-filled balloons. You can just make them into different arches and all different types of bouquets. So there are alternatives, and I don't want to crush anybody's joy, but I hope that you will all consider voting yes and sending this on to council to keep balloons off of our beaches and our parks and in the mountains and the deserts. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, June Hansberger. That concludes speakers for item 7B.
Thank you, Camille, and all speakers. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Parker, and I just want to say this is actually a difficult vote for me because I do find joy in helium balloons. I've always felt that, they makes any place a party once you put some helium balloons in there. But, I also do feel my kids are older, they're in college or out of college, and I feel like, times have changed a bit. So I think we have to think more of our environment. That's all.
Anybody else?
Just a point of clarification. Is this a time where we can sort of advocate for our view of this ordinance, or is it just for questions?
You can say anything you want to say.
Okay, well, I would just, like to voice my support of this balloon for scientific reasons. I'm a marine biologist. I have my PhD in oceanography from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I study coral reef ecosystems that are just dying before our eyes due to climate change. And in that field of research, we're focused on increasing resiliency, ecosystem resiliency to climate change. And to do that, you have to manage these local stressors to coral reefs. So overfishing, pollution. So the same thing's happening to our temperate ecosystems here, our kelp forests, our rocky intertidal zones. They're diminishing from climate change too. So any local actions we can take to increase the resiliency that they have to get them through this sort of dark, the darkest period of climate change over the next few hundred years is, in our ecosystem's best interest. This ordinance is also in line with our zero waste goals and our climate action plan. The production of many of these balloon items actually, contribute to greenhouse gases. So Many cities in California have already implemented lighter than air balloon bans, and so we're not the first. We would be the first in San Diego County, I've learned. But so I just feel like this is a good action for our city to take. Thanks.
Okay, so at this point, we would entertain a motion, and the motion would be to approve the recommendation to the City Council to introduce and adopt Ordinance 2021-19. Would anybody like to so move?
I'd like to make a motion to, yes, approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we have a passed motion. Thank you all. Okay, we're now moving on with item 8, Commissioner-initiated agenda items. This is the proposed resolution language outlining actions to support the safety commissioning of the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station songs. This is mine. Commissioner Adams and I are on the subcommittee, as was Commissioner Bisconder before she left the commission. Let me pull this up. Okay. So just a little bit of background here. Those who've been at the meetings for a few months would remember that we've had several robust inputs from the public, including a presentation from the Samuel Lawrence Foundation on April 8th, as well as a presentation from Southern California Edison on May 13th, and then a very nice smattering of public comments at both of those periods and in other ways. And so this was clearly an issue that I think before that was not really much on the radar of the Environmental Commission, but there seemed to be a really strong and wide interest from the general public, as well as from some special interests, to take a look at this. And so we decided to create a subcommittee, and the subcommittee met and did its job, and decided to recommend the draft resolution that you see here. Just in terms of a quick summary of what this is, essentially the reality is that the regulatory bodies that are really responsible for songs decommissioning are within the state of California, as well as within the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and so the city of Encinitas is not a very large player here in terms of its legal ability to regulate these activities. It's also worth mentioning that songs is not within the city of Encinitas, but certainly it feels that the citizens of many of the citizens of the city of Encinitas are interested in keeping an eye on the decommissioning of songs, are aware of some potential problems that that potentially could happen, and would like the city to play some kind of a role to make sure that that work is progressing in a responsible manner as possible. And so based upon this, there are a couple of areas that we recommend that the city engage. One is that the city staff evaluate partnering with the county, UC San Diego, and other coastal cities to potentially implement public real-time radiation and air monitoring. The idea there would be that the city staff should kind of research that opportunity and bring options and budgeting back to the city council, or potentially through the Environmental Commission, if that is something that really is possible to do and advisable. And then the rest of these requirements are essentially just support statements for the city to express, that scientifically validated and robust procedures are in place to make sure that the decommissioning is moving along safely and smoothly. And finally, of course, the permanent question of nuclear waste repository. I mean, permanent's sort of a relative term here, but long-term nuclear waste storage, that was meant to be Yucca Mountain, and of course that project is unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, discontinued, but it's dead, and so there is no successor, to that, and so really, one of the root causes here of the problem is that there is nowhere to take nuclear waste right now within the United States that feels like a safe long-term solution. And so the recommendation here is for the city to support congressional and other efforts to really find a safe and permanent national repository for disposal of the nation's nuclear waste. So with that, maybe we'll go to public comment, and then we can open up for questions. Actually, Commissioner Adams, is there anything you want to add?
Just that, thank you for taking the lead on this, Chair Novi. Put the bulk of the work into this, and yeah, I think it's great, and it's as you said, we're not the body. Encinitas isn't the body that can really do much here. So this is kind of one of those things where we're asking the city to recommend to support many of these initiatives.
Thank you. Always my pleasure to engage where the citizens seem to want us to engage. Okay, public comment.
Yes, we have two speakers tonight. Our first speaker is Mr. Manuel Camargo. He's representing Southern California Edison. Mr. Camargo, when you get to the podium, you have 3 minutes to address the commission. Thank you.
Nice hat before I got here. Good evening. My name is Manuel Camargo, and I am with SCE, which is the decommissioning agent for SONGS. SCE is committed to the safe storage of spent nuclear fuel at SONGS. We have demonstrated that we listen to and act upon comments from the public regarding how we store that spent fuel. As a result, SONGS now goes above and beyond what is required by the NRC for the safe storage of spent fuel. A couple of examples. One is thicker canisters. We use corrosion-resistant stainless steel. We have a real-time radiation monitoring system for our spent fuel facility, and there are others. My colleagues and I presented important facts to this commission in May. Facts about the nature of spent fuel, canister integrity, our emergency plan, and our efforts to relocate the spent fuel off-site. We offered to meet with members of the commission, host a site visit, and otherwise share the science behind the spent fuel storage. The resolution under consideration tonight is similar to resolutions put forth in other communities by a local group. Unfortunately, the resolution incorporates the same errors of fact, false narratives, and misplaced conclusions as these previous resolutions. Here's a couple. One is a claim that there's a 50-mile emergency evacuation zone. That's incorrect. Until June 2015, SONGS maintained a 10-mile emergency planning zone in which protective actions may have included evacuation. However, because the spent fuel is now in passive storage, the EPZ no longer exists. An economic study is cited in the resolution, and that's flawed. It's based on a Fukushima-type event, which cannot happen at SONGS because the reactors are defueled. An alternative RAD monitoring program has been mentioned in many forums. If it's the Canary Project, we met with the team leading that effort nearly 2 years ago. Based on our technical analysis, we question whether the Canary Project can in fact be used to detect a compromised canister. Had you come to us on these matters, we could have talked through the facts. So what can Encinitas do? One is join the Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now coalition and partner with the San Diego County Board of Supervisors and others in advocating for the feds to take steps to allow SONGS spent fuel to be located off-site. A second is to visit SONGS and learn more about spent fuel storage. And a third is to engage the true experts in this field, like the NRC. So we at SCE, once again, we invite you to do what Representative Mike Levin, NRC Commissioner David Wright, Coastal Commission Chair Steve Padilla, and Camp Pendleton Commanding General Jason Woodworth have all done. And that is tour the site and see for yourselves how we manage the spent fuel safely. I would encourage at least your subcommittee, Chair Novi and Commissioner Adams, to take us up on the offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camargo. Our next speaker is Patrick Batten. He is representing Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now. Mr. Batten, you have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Novi and commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We've spoken before the commission on several occasions to provide an update on our efforts to secure a federally licensed off-site storage of disposal and a disposal solution for the spent fuel that's currently stranded at SONGS. Over the last 2 months, our coalition has grown tremendously. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors unanimously voted to join the Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now on August 17th. We've also continued to build bipartisan support across the region and are now poised to play a meaningful role in the future discussions regarding legislation and appropriation that allows for the removal of spent fuel from Southern California's coastline. As we mentioned previously, several developments at the federal level provide reasons for optimism that follow for the removal of spent fuel from our optimism and underscores the need for San Diego County stakeholders to speak with a unified voice on this issue. The House recently passed appropriations bills that provides nearly $28 million in funding for 2022 activities related to spent fuel storage, including a consent-based siting of a federal consolidated interim storage facility. In addition, the Department of Energy has indicated its plans to launch a process for consent-based siting in the near future. These signs are encouraging, but coordinated, broad-based local and regional support will be critical to ensure that the federal government considers the unique interest of the stakeholders in the vicinity of San Onofre. It is imperative that we come together and take advantage of a truly unprecedented window of opportunity. We believe that by joining the Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now, will provide the best way for the city of Encinitas to achieve its goals stated at the end of the Commissioner's recommended resolution, which is to support congressional efforts to open a consent-based permanent national repository for the disposal of the nation's nuclear waste. As you consider the resolution before you, I urge you to recommend the City Council to vote to join our coalition as a supporting member. With the window of opportunity that appears to be opening at the federal level, that is the best way for the city to ensure it has the seat at the table. It will help them have that seat to discuss the spent fuel and ultimately removal from our coastline that must be completed to finish the decommissioning of songs and restoring the site. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Batten. That concludes public speakers.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. What would it take to join Action for Spent Fuel Solutions Now?
I don't know the answer to that question. The way we wrote this, it really was acknowledging, that this is a highly technical, area. There's a lot of dimensions of this, and what we really, I think, want to have happen is that the council directs the staff within reason to take a look into these areas with a little bit more expertise, and knowledge about what the city's exact, legal authorities, may or may not be with regard to this area. So, we kind of tried to write something that was really responsive to the concerns that the community is bringing up, as well as, gave the city staff some leeway to come back with some, meatier recommendations and things that can happen. It is true that the county of San Diego, the supervisors have signed on, to this organization, but I just didn't feel qualified, and I'm not sure that my colleagues did, to make a real recommendation to the city on this. I'll be 100% honest. The thing that I sort of resonated, there are two things I really resonated with, on this topic as I learned about it, and I would say I came into it with a pretty open mind. One was that I was surprised, just how much public comment we got, how many people in our community are authentically nervous, and nuclear waste is a scary thing, and I think that's there, and it is interesting watching all over the world and all over the country, whether you're talking about, Indian Head Point up in New York, and, there's just a lot of issues around public acceptance of nuclear energy, and in this case, it's decommissioning. People are nervous, and when we had the public comment period, I was very struck by what appeared to me to be reputable voices on really both sides of this, right? I mean, the gentleman who spoke before and the folks who represent, Edison seem to be quite knowledgeable and very well spoken. And there are, people within the government, in the military, other places that, have a lot of confidence in the process. There's been very, very intensive review from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and from the state and Coastal Commission. And yet, at the same time, we did get public comment from retired rear admirals, people who had, real expertise in nuclear operations, and, other people saying that they were nervous. And it felt, quite frankly, like in some cases it was a nervousness, it was a trust issue, between stakeholders within the public who should be listened to, and the utility, and in some cases maybe with the process as run by the state and federal governments. So those are really weighty technical areas for the city of Encinitas Environmental Commission to wade into. And so, rather than attempt to really litigate that and figure out who's right and who's wrong, and I think probably at the end of the day, you're dealing with a lot of very differing risk assessment thresholds that different people have. What was most important was to identify where the city can really do something actionable that potentially could, with specific regard around San Onofre, protect the people here. And I think that the only thing that the city potentially could do in that area is make monitoring happen. There are some experts at UCSD that really seem to feel that is worthwhile and actually not expensive and within reason for for a group of cities working together. And then beyond that, the two other things that you can really focus on are inserting more intensely into the process between the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the state, and the utility, which, just frankly, the city doesn't have a whole lot of leg to stand on to do that. They can say we can say as much as we want to, we support this, we support that, and so we are saying that a little bit. We hope you're looking at these things and those things. And then the third thing, of course, is trying to be a voice in solving the long-term waste storage thing, which is also very complicated. And joining this association may be the a way in which a city can do that. So it's a long answer. We wrestled with these things. I want to be humble about this. I don't think that we became nuclear experts in this process. But I think we wanted to put something together that sent something to the city council that they could action upon, where there were something happening at all three of those levels. Immediate possible responses to a potential problem at San Onofre, insertion in some way into the conversation with the feds, the state, and the utility, and then the long-term waste disposal question. And since we do have some folks here from Edison, I would encourage you all, again, and I appreciate the offer to come visit. I would love to come visit. I think we didn't just because of COVID concerns and things like that right now. I think just listen to the public, and I know that I'm sure that you do, but it's very hard for. I have a PhD in plant biology, right? And I'm not a scientist, but I am not a nuclear expert. It's very, very challenging, even for a literate scientist, to listen to the crosstalk between you all and these members of the public that really appear as sane, rational, expert actors who are questioning whether or not you're all trustworthy and that the process is reasonable. And that's maybe the scariest part. That for a body like ours to try to have to. Advocate is a strong word here, but just sift through. And that makes, at least the scientist like me, it makes me nervous. It makes me want, there to be engagement. I know you're all in the business of trust being the name of the game. I know there's a lot of controlling law and regulation, and you seem to follow that. I know we're also dealing in a period, and the oil spill is a really great example of, how, the promises of large utilities, do not always result in positive environmental and public health outcomes. So I would encourage you all to just listen to that, find a way to address that is not pointing out the very minor errors that we may have made in the non-binding sections of this resolution, and see if there's a way to have that conversation with the public and with our city in a way that yields more fruit, I think, than maybe some of the approaches that have been taken to this point. That's my soapbox.
That was a pretty good soapbox. In reading this, I find that it's pretty appropriate and proactive, and not really. Some of the asks really aren't that costly to create a facility for the future maintenance and be proactive to have a facility for transferring. So when and if this does come forward, we're first in line to transfer the materials because we're ready. So I find these to be very reasonable resolutions.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I will second that I don't feel, that I have the technical expertise to weigh in on what's, accurate and inaccurate about the different sides of this, but the risks involved are very great. So it does appear that this is an instance where we should take the precautionary approach because, the risks of nuclear waste exposure are pretty terrifying. So I agree with Commissioner Morrison that this doesn't seem like, overreach or inappropriate set of recommendations and actions to take for the city.
And just to address I think it's a good question, what would it take to get on the coalition? I think that that doesn't necessarily have to be a part of this. We could explore that outside of this. But I think it's a good question.
I mean, I'm perfectly happy. I know Eric, even without making a motion to edit things, can we include in the agenda report up to the council just that the city of Encinitas, the county of San Diego has joined that body, and just make sure that everyone's aware of it.
I'm going to be careful here because I don't really want to guide decision-making, but I do think that if there is some consideration for some of what's been presented here tonight, that maybe part of the recommendation could be to further explore some of those things with those groups. So whether that's the commission engaging in that level, or if that's, you just make that a part of the motion and as it moves forward to the next stages of decision-making potentially, whether we at a staff level or at a city level can engage in those and explore those opportunities more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, and I think what I'd be happy to do, does anybody have any other comment or question? I think what I would propose is I'd be happy to make a motion with a very minor edit to this last requirement that would essentially say, requirement to support congressional efforts to open a content-based permanent national repository for the disposal of the nation's nuclear waste, including consideration of joining the Action for Spent Fuel Solution now. So that we're not requiring it, but it's very clear to the city council that is an option that they have, and at their discretion they could enter it immediately or ask city staff to let them know what's going, what that would mean.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the cleaner way to do it is to just make it part of the motion. I don't know that you necessarily want to build it into the resolution language unless that's at your discretion, if that's something you want to do. Or,
I don't know that I understand the difference between those two things.
well, if you're building it into this language and a resolution that will move forward, but if you're just saying as your recommendation would be, again, I have to be careful here because I don't want to put a recommendation in your on the table. To potentially approve the language as it is, and to provide direction to consider these other alternatives that have been presented here.
Okay, I think I understand that. So then the motion here would be to approve the resolution, but include in the agenda report that the city staff could consider.
Or
joining
continue
Action for
dialogue, or
Spent Fuels
continue
now.
discussion, or evaluate the.
Evaluate. I think evaluate's a good term. So approve the resolution as written, with the addition in the agenda report that the staff could evaluate Action for Spent Fuel Solutions now as a body that the city as an entity could join.
Yeah.
All right, there's my tortured motion. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, approved. Thank you, and thank you all for your public comment. All right, do we have any updates on items of interest?
I have one. Me. So just for discussion, next month's meeting is actually scheduled for November 11th, which is a holiday. So I've had some preliminary discussion with Commission Chair Novi and Vice Chair Adams. There's some thought of just canceling that meeting and just reconvening in December. There's some logistical challenges to reschedule that meeting. We'd have to find an appropriate date, and we'd have to, the chamber would have to be unoccupied. I'm not trying to lean either way. I'm just kind of laying it out for the group, opening it up for if there is a preference or some leanings. I'm really kind of opening it up for Commission Chair Novi and
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Vice Chair Adams. Thank you.
I think Commissioner Adams and I have communicated a little bit about this via email. We feel that unless there's some sort of big issue that comes up, from the city or elsewhere that we really need to vote on it, there would not be much of a negative of skipping next month's meeting. We really can't hold it at the regularly scheduled time because of the holiday, and it's actually very challenging for the city staff to find us another time and location. Also, I would also add we have the 2 vacancies, and so we are not guaranteed quorums either. And so hopefully by the December meeting, we would have, at least 1, if not 2 commissioners, back with us, and things should work out. So I think we're comfortable making the decision to hold until December. Anybody feel differently?
I agree. That sounds reasonable.
All right. Eric, chamomile, is that all right? Thank you. Okay, any other updates or items of interest?
Just in light of the oil spill that was brought up, just want to acknowledge what a tragedy it is. I don't know how many of you have been on the beach this week. There are, hundreds, if not thousands of tar balls, and it's just heartbreaking. I have wondered, and this is a potential just action item maybe for the city, I have not been able to find any information about whether it's safe to go in the water or not. I know the beaches aren't closed. I haven't seen any cleanup underway yet. We've seen the signs that say report tar balls, and I think we're all reporting them, but nothing's been done about it yet. But I've conferred with Surfrider, and I've looked at the Central Command websites, and I just can't find any information about the safety of going in the water. A lot of people are surfing right now, so I don't know how to bring that up to the city, but it would be nice to be informed about that.
I know that I went to UC's Santa Barbara, and there's tar like that. There were tar like that on the beach all the time. You had your ocean suit, you had your beach suit, sandals, and then because you would get tar. I had tar in my teeth one time when I went scuba diving one time. So I'm used to it, or at least I was at that time. So I don't think, I've seen the tar on the beach, it's significant, and I don't want to downplay it, but I don't think, I don't know. It's something that a lot of people live with.
Yeah, I surfed this week and this morning and saw a tar ball when I came out. And it's nasty stuff when you see a tar ball. It's one of this week's first time I've seen them. But they are pretty dispersed, not to minimize it, on the rocks in front of pipes there. And, being in the water, I didn't see anything. But yeah, you see it on a rock and they tell you not to touch it. And if you move it, it shows why these cleanups, when you see it firsthand, as you probably know, why these cleanups are so difficult. It couldn't have a tougher substance to clean, I think. So, but that's a good suggestion. I would hope that if there was an issue going in the water, I think the mayor sent out an email about this that I kind of briefly saw. She said they would let us know, right? So, take your own precaution.
And I'll just say I've been on the beach too, and I've signed up for the county's emergency reports, and so I think I get right now a daily email, and it says no if there are beaches closed or not and where they are. The assumption being if nobody's closed the beaches, it's safe to be there, but don't touch the tar balls. The sort of other piece of that is I have witnessed when I've been down at the beach, folks from the state. Well, I don't know that they're cleaning. I think they're assessing. So there's definitely bodies, and I'm again assuming here that they are qualified to, be looking for the things that would, create a closure. So I think there's action, and I think if we're paying attention, we can find it. There are some ways for the average citizen out there. But I do think it's very important we bring this up. Clearly, there's going to be a huge, aftermath of this in so many ways. The reality of cleaning it up, the impact, the massive impact it's already having to, Orange County environment and businesses and everything else, and recreation. And, it may come down here, and that's going to be awful if it happens for us. And of course, political action on how to make sure this never happens again. So I think our commission's going to really have to be paying really close attention, figure out what the right way into this conversation is. How can the city of Encinitas be most effective? What would we need to do to help it be effective and represent, the people here and the environment? And this is a. I think, this commission has been very responsible for pushing a lot of decarbonization initiatives, and more so recently, including the big one that was just approved by the city council in terms of, natural gas. This is obviously going to help a lot of people understand in a more acute way some of the real challenges that the fossil fuel-based economy brings.
I'm with Carol. I had to get tar off my feet quite a bit as a child in Huntington Beach. So I feel for our kids for the next 5 years. It's not going to go away.
I want to say I was in Newport Beach last Saturday, and their beach is clean. There are no tar balls on their beach. They had a big crew of people in hazmat suits cleaning the whole thing. So I don't know if that's what we need. I don't know if we're getting dribbles of more tar balls. I don't know, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess my reason for bringing this up is there just seems to be a kind of lack of information. It would be nice to have a little bit more information. Like, I haven't been able to locate, any data, any water quality monitoring data for oil. And so it's just, but, you need the data to make a decision. And it would be nice if the citizens of Encinitas had some data to make an informed decision, not just sort of guess.
Maybe it makes sense to, request, Eric is here. So for our December meeting, could the relevant person in the city staff who interfaces with the state, on this particular issue, brief the commission so that we really understand how communications are evolving and, how decisions are made?
I won't make any promises, but yes, I will. I can socialize it and see who, and it's been a pretty. It's been a central command at the countywide level, so obviously the city is a participant in that and providing information, and so it's really going to be at the county level, but I know our lifeguards in particular have kind of taken the lead for the city. So I'm not going to speak too out of turn because I'm not very, very close to it. From the water quality perspective, I can tell you that the County of San Diego has been doing some testing. That's my understanding. I don't know what those results are, but I think the safe assumption is if they were bad, that the public would know. So, so with that said, I will follow up and see if we can't get a more complete kind of presentation of the information, especially if the issue has kind of died down and they're not so busy managing the actual issue itself. So maybe that will give us that time to be able to kind of debrief on the whole set of issues and how it impacted the county and the response and all of that.
Great. That's a perfect solution. Thank you.
Secretary Meadow here. Just wanted to add on it is very sad. I wanted to concur with that. On a happier note, at last night's city council meeting, the mayor and the city council presented a proclamation declaring today, October 14, 2021, Children's Environmental Health Day. Just wanted to share that.
That's awesome. I think we all do it for the kids, right? Yep. Anybody have any other updates or items of interest? And I just want to say these conversations are just so useful because it really helps get at, ways in which we can work with the city staff and be a part of that conduit to help the public and ourselves understand where things are. And this is certainly an emerging crisis, and we'll have a role to play, even though we're not obviously ourselves emergency responders. Any other updates? Okay. Any future commissioner-initiated agenda items? Okay.
I had, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh. Commissioner Morrison, did you want to speak? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mine was just that I think I overheard Chamomile saying that Cyclovia is scheduled for January, and we're skipping November, so it'd be December when we talk about it. And I know I signed up to help Christian with that, so any information today would be helpful.
The Parks and Recreation Department at the City of Encinitas has scheduled Cyclovia to occur on January 9th, 2022, and it takes place on South Coast Highway 101 from J Street to D Street, so the highway will be closed to car traffic from probably 8:30 to 3:30, so the public should be aware of that. But the event is from 10 to 2. And the Parks and Recreation Department probably has a lot more information than I, but it is scheduled for January 9th, Cyclovia. Tomato, tomato.
I guess, is your question, do we, yeah, because I haven't done anything. Does the commissioners have any action items to do before then that we need, do you know?
You could certainly support it and spread the word and show up to the event. You could check in with Nick Buck with the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay.
And Buck at City of Encinitas, ca.gov, and he's in charge of that event, so he might like your help.
I went last year, or 2 years ago, I guess, and if you haven't gone, especially if you have kids, it's a really, really cool thing. I mean, it was I've been here 5.5 years, and it was one of the cooler events that I've participated in Encinitas, so kudos to our past commissioners for spearheading this and putting it together.
Any other or any future commissioner-initiated agenda items?
We spoke last meeting about the Green Building Initiative, just making improvements with existing structures to make them more energy efficient. And I just wanted to keep that momentum going because we heard a lot of really good suggestions, some which are already being implemented or at least investigated and researched by city staff. Crystal presented on that. And some which sort of remain to be explored. And Crystal mentioned that, she wishes there were more than one of her to try to get some of these things done. So I thought it might be necessary to form a subcommittee to kind of explore some of those recommendations further, whether that means writing a report and then reporting back. But that's an item I'd be interested in spearheading.
Great. I think Eric or Chamomile can help you with the agenda report that would be required to put that on the agenda for the next meeting. And awesome. Anything else? I'm going to use my physical gavel, and I'm going to adjourn us. Thank you for a great meeting. A lot of great stuff done. Great to get back in person. Thank you to the public. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chamomile. I feel like I'm at a rock concert.